Morning, afternoon. Where to start with this one? Right, so somebody in the group, when I said I was going to be talking about hips, I asked if you had anything specific going on with hips, right? So just as a caveat, bearing in mind that yes, I am a sports therapist, I deal with injuries and all that kind of stuff. Obviously the person is there in front of me, I can get hands-on, I can feel tension, I can feel joint quality because they're right there in front of me. When somebody asks me a question in my Facebook group, I have to kind of say, yeah, I'm prepared to answer that question. I'm prepared to give you general pointers and some suggestions and options. But that being said, you are a person in a group just asking a general question. I cannot give you specifics. That would be extremely silly of me and not very bright of you to listen to somebody who's giving you advice over Facebook. So all that being said, however, there is a lot you could do for side hip pain. So this is a really common one. I work with a lot of people with this issue, so I'm just going to stand up and show you what I mean. So here, this area. If we were to be completely, or if we were to be a bit more specific about it, it feels, it can be painful, or it could just be uncomfortable. It generally starts as uncomfortable and just ramps itself up. And it's usually something that can wake you up at night or stop you getting to sleep, that kind of thing. It can be uncomfortable to lie on your side because this part of your body is grumpy. So various reasons for what they would call lateral hip pain. Bursitis, which is swelling of the little fluid-filled sac that lives there. So it lives kind of underneath a lot of tissue. There's tendons, your IT band lives all around there, and it could get grumpy and irritated. It could be the tendon of your glutes coming round. There's a few different bits and bats going on around there. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. If that part of your body is hurting, it's just it needs sorting out. So the main thrust of sorting it out from a research perspective, what they've found is strengthening your glute medius, which is the hip muscle on the side of it's on both obviously, the hip muscles on the side that are responsible for stabilising your pelvis, balance, and for certain movements of your hip joint or your leg in the hip socket. All that's fine, and that's absolutely true, and strengthening and mobilising and all that good stuff is great. Movement is sort of how I approach most things, you know. How are you moving? What sort of movements can you do that would alleviate some of the pressure perhaps? And then what kind of strength movements can you do to improve the strength? So we've covered quite a few, we will be doing if we haven't already, depending on when I post this video, but we're covering quite a lot of strengthening for those muscles anyway, because you can't really talk about the hips and not cover the glutes in some kind of way, shape or form. So we're doing a lot of glute strengthening this sort of December in this hip series. So today I kind of wanted to cover something slightly different, which was alignment. So the things that I see, typically this kind of, this comes up, I don't want to make it a stereotype, but it tends to come up more with women. This issue on the side of the hip tends to come up more with women. It can come up more once you've kind of hit that menopause kind of stage where the hormones start to have an impact on tendons. So you can suffer more tendon issues as we go. It's something to look forward to, yay. Don't you just love being female? So unfortunately menopause, so sort of as you get sort of 45-ish onwards, your tendons start to kind of take a bit of a beating for some reason. There's a whole reason for it, hormonally. So again, I'm not trying to get into too much of that, but that can have an impact which can alter whether some movements are better than others. So alignment perspective, right? So we're going to cover lots of strengthening stuff. But from an alignment perspective, because it happens to women quite a lot, this is kind of where I come at it from and have a lot of success as well, right? So I'm going to find myself a chair. Oh dear. Women, God bless us, right? Have all been brought up to sit like this. to sit with your knees glued together, particularly if you're a skirt wearer, because who wants to sit like a bloke, right? But to sit with your knees glued together means that your inner thighs are having to work all the time. So the muscles on the inner thigh, these muscles can get quite tight, which can have an impact on, I'm trying to get into a position where I can kind of show you how narrow I become. So my pelvis is year wide, and because I'm gluing my knees together, I've got this angle from my hips. So the more my leg comes across my body, the more tension I'm going to put down the outside edge of my thigh, right? So if you are a leg crosser, and it doesn't really matter which leg, you could argue that the leg that's coming across is perhaps under more tension, but the very act of crossing your legs, the other one has to come across as well. So it could be either side. Typically I find that this side is the one that gets more grumpy, but it could be either side. So if you're a leg crosser, you know, somebody who's very crossing legs, and even if the legs are out long, legs are crossing, then again it's sometimes, you know, not the obvious stuff. Yeah, there might be some glute weakness, and arguably being in this position and constantly using these muscles and not using these muscles is going to have its impact on how strong they are. Sitting on your arse all the time switches everything off. We know that. We know it's going to kill you pretty soon kind of thing. I don't believe that. Sitting's not bad for you. It's just the fact that we do it all the time in just the same shape, either like this or like this or whatever we do. Yeah, so learn to man spread for a start. You want to take as much tension off as you can. Let's have a look at standing. So from a standing perspective, a lot of women, again, will tend to stand either with their feet kind of close together, or certainly not quite as wide as pelvis, right? So how do you know if your pelvis distance apart? That's a good question. Let me grab, if I got here, I've got this. It's going to be a bit tricky to show you, but I'm kind of hoping I can do it. So if I was to dangle, so if you find your hip bone at the front, and I put this red doofah, it's not ideal because it's not straight, but you get the idea. That red doofah, it being an elastic band when it stops moving, should land in the middle of my ankle joint. So my hip bone, if I was to draw a line, my hip bone and the centre of my ankle would be in line. The best demonstration I've ever done, but it'll give you some idea. Let's see if I can keep it there. Here. That's crap, isn't it? What else have I got? I think you get the idea. What you need is something that dangles. Let me just grab something that dangles. Like a plumb line. This is my plumb line. So I've got it on my hip joint, and the plug is now in the centre of my ankle. In fact, I'm a little bit wide. Yeah, there. Oh, interesting. Who knew? Right, so that's that plug. You can see it's in the centre of my ankle. If you are too narrow, you see how the plug now dangles outside of my base of support, if you like. I've not changed where it is on my hip joint. I've just moved my feet narrow. So if I bring my feet back out to pelvis distance, the plug comes back into the centre of my ankle. I'm hoping that kind of makes sense. You can do it with any, it doesn't need to be a plug, it just needs to be something kind of heavy. But it'll give you an idea. So if you are somebody who stands with their feet kind of closer together, you back to that whole concept of putting more load down the side of your, outside of your legs, hips in particular. The other one is if you are somebody who stands, these kinds of things, crossing the legs. It's not that these things are bad, right? It's not that I'm saying you have to stand rigid pelvis distance apart and nothing else. What I'm saying is, if these are your habits and you're constantly hanging off one leg, you know, like this or like this, you are loading up that tissue and just constantly loading and loading and loading. So you can strengthen all you want, and you might get some success with strengthening and not doing anything else. That's absolutely fine. That is the case. But what I find is it's not so much what you're not doing, as in adding more strength and training and blah blah blah, which is always useful. But it can also be, what are you doing the rest of the time? So if your habit is to hang, your habit is to stand with your feet, cross your legs, close together, everything being inwards, you're adding more pressure to the outside of the hips. Typically we always have one side that we prefer to hang off, which might explain why one side is usually worse than the other. Don't know, bodies are a bit weird. It can shift from side to side as well. That's just the joy of having a body. So that's just my suggestions for alleviating pressure the rest of the time when you are not doing active strengthening and mobility work. Otherwise, the strengthening stuff is to strengthen these bad boys on the side, the glute medius, and like I say, we're doing tons and tons of stuff for that over December. And then also to stretch the inner thighs. You know, if you come into any of my sessions, you'll see we spend a lot of time in sort of straddle stretches, 90s, everything really to open up the muscles and stuff around the hips. If you can, without stating the obvious, without coming into lecture land, if you can spend less time sitting on chairs or sofas at that 90 angle, even just coming down to the floor, spending a few minutes in cross-legged, crossing the other way, maybe a butterfly stretch, just have a play there, come into a straddle stretch and just have a move or a play and a move about in that position. You're just trying to get your hips to go through some different ranges of movement instead of always being here. And if you're shouting at the screen and going, I've got problems here, but I sit like this all the time, then comment on the Facebook group or send me a message and we shall discuss further because I'd like to speak to you.